starting with a view out my back window because that way I can trick my phone into not rotating. But let's look at the cursive alphabet and let's look at the first two letters that we're going to learn, the letters L and E. See how similar they are? In fact, the only real difference is that E is shorter than L. So let's get started. I'm going to show you how to make an L first. It starts on this bottom line. All the lowercase letters that we're learning start on the bottom line. They don't all end there, but they all start there. So you point to that bottom line, you glide up to that top line, a nice slanted line if you can. If the slant is hard at first, don't worry about it. Loop back just a little bit, glide back down to the bottom, and make a small tail. Notice that this line right here is really pretty straight, and I only curve at the very bottom. It's going to be easy to curve too soon. Watch what happens when I do that. I glide up to the top, I loop back, and if I curve right away, it looks like my L has legs and it might walk right away. The other mistake you might make is when you glide up and when you loop back, you might loop back too far and your L might end up really chubby up top. So you just want to loop back just a little tiny bit. That loop right there should be pretty thin. So point to that bottom line, glide up to the top line, loop back just a little bit, glide back down, and make a small tail. One more time, point to the bottom, glide up to the top line, loop back and glide down to the bottom, and make a small tail. That's L. Let me show you E. E is essentially the same thing, except instead of going to the top line, you're going to go to the middle line. This is why it's really important to make sure your L goes all the way to the top and to make sure that your E doesn't go past the middle. Otherwise, it's very hard to tell these two letters apart. So you're going to point to the bottom line, glide up to the middle line, loop back just a little bit, glide back down, and make a small tail. That's an E. Point to the bottom, glide up to the middle line, loop back down to the bottom, make a small tail. Glide up to the middle, loop back down to the bottom, and make a small tail. I'm going to show you what these would look like if you make them on just one line. I then have to make sure that this middle part is I'm an imaginary line that I'm keeping in my head. So if I make an L, I glide all the way to the top, I loop back down to the bottom, and I make a small tail. An E would only go up to the middle. So that would be an L and an E if I'm only using the regular lines on the notebook paper rather than turning it into a 3-lined paper. Practice, practice, practice bigger L's and bigger E's first before you start to try to make them small. The next thing is I'm going to show you how to connect these letters together. Again, you should practice them by themselves before you connect them. Make sure your hands really know the motions. Make sure your brain is really creating that neural pathway for these new letters before you're trying to put them together. So when I connect an L to an E, this tail connects, the tail of my L connects to the beginning of my E. So I just keep going. So if I'm going to write L and then E, I point to the bottom, I glide up to the top line, I loop back down to the bottom, and this time I don't pause, I just glide right up into my E to that middle line, loop back down to the bottom, and then I can make my small tail. See how I didn't even stop in the middle? That tail just kind of swooped me right up into the beginning of the E. If I want to write the word eel, starting E, E, and then L, I point to the bottom line, glide up to that middle line, loop back down to the bottom, glide right up to my next E to the middle line, loop back down to the bottom. Now I glide all the way to the top line, loop back down to the bottom, and make my small tail. That's E, E, L. That's the word eel. So I only know 2 letters, but I can connect them in lots of different ways just to practice going from one letter to the next without picking up my pen until I'm done. Doesn't really matter if you're writing real words or nonsense words. The important thing is just to practice those motions.